This is Update. My name is Rimamnde Shawulu. Today, in our security update, we'll be looking at how the federal government hunts for killers of the 32 Muslim worshippers that were killed in Katsina a few weeks ago. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Musa, has accused politicians of fueling violence to discredit government. And former Chief of Army Staff, General Yusuf Buratai, urges the federal government to consider nationwide lockdown to tackle bandits. And as well, some concerned Nigerians are advocating for the establishment of a presidential task force on national security to stop the killings by bandits. And we have the story of troops, as it happens in almost every week, killing suspected terrorists in Sokoto state. Now, we'll look at a few of the headlines and then we'll proceed to discussing and raising some salient issues from the events that have taken place in the last few weeks. The federal government says it will ensure that the perpetrators of the attack on Muslim worshippers in Malumfashi local government area of Katsina state are brought to justice. Information Minister Mohammed Idris, in a statement on Friday, described the killings as callous and barbaric. He stressed that such acts of terror would not be allowed to take root in the country. It will be recalled that on Tuesday, August 19, gunmen attacked worshippers observing morning prayers in a mosque in the community, during which several people were killed. Abdullahi Faskari, secretary to the government of Katsina State, confirmed that 32 people were killed during the attack. The information minister, who was echoing the resolve of the federal government, warned that wanton acts of violence is not only an assault on the people of Malumfashi, but also on shared humanity and values of Nigeria as a nation. Idris said security forces were already on the trail of the attackers, assuring that no stone will be left unturned until the attackers are apprehended and held accountable. As part of the frustration that Nigerians generally have about the unending security challenges in the country, the Chief of Defense Staff, General Musa, has said that some politicians are deliberately fueling violence to discredit the government. Speaking in an interview on the channel's television flagship program, Democracy Today, on Thursday, August 21, General Musa linked the recent surge in killings across the country to the build-up to the 2027 general election. The CDS noted that the rising wave of insecurity compared to last year could not be divorced from political activities ahead of the general elections. It will be recalled that across the country, there have been renewed attacks by bandits in the northwest and by gunmen said to be Fulani headsmen in several states, including Plateau, Adamawa, and Taraba states.
Let's work together. They've synergized their efforts together, both the bandits and the terrorists working together because, one, a common goal. They want to make money. They want to just make sure that the communities are not suffering for whatever reason. And again, some part of politics. Some individuals don't also want, when there is peace, it shows that the government is doing well. And when there is no peace, it shows the government is not doing well. And you realize that last year we had the least number of deaths throughout last year. Then how come this year, then suddenly everything has spiked up because politics is coming in, elections are coming in. So you cannot rule out the fact that some people are also controlling them, making sure that they show that there is no peace.
Makes Nigeria ungovernable and discredit the government.
But you see, the funny thing is that how will you want to govern people that you want to kill? Or how do you want to kill the people you want to govern? What do you gain from it?
Are you not able to identify?
And the former Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Yusuf Buratai, has urged the federal government to consider lockdown to tackle bandits or terrorists across the country. The former Chief of Army Staff made this in an interview with the channel's television. He said insecurity should not be left in the hands of the military alone, but be treated as a national crisis, requiring collective efforts and sacrifice. He said that before leaving office as Chief of Army Staff, he had warned that insurgency could last longer than expected if a long-term strategy was not adopted.
When there are national crises, we need to mobilize everybody, not just the military alone. Look at COVID-19. how much was spent, how much was invested into information, into communication, into advertisement, and so on, into palliatives, into a lot of preventive measures. So much. The whole nation was locked down because of COVID-19. But we can do the same thing. We can lock down this country to make sure that everybody, concentrates and deal with this cankerworm of so-called terrorists and bandits and kidnappers and so on. It is very fundamental. It's very important.
And in Taraba State, the people of Takum, Musa, and Yangtu areas of the state have raised an alarm over plans by some criminal elements to launch massive attacks on several communities in the state. Emmanuel Okwi, the president of the Kutab-Yato, Nigeria, made the allegations at a press conference in Jalingo last Saturday. He urged security agencies to swiftly act to avert the impending attacks and safeguard lives, property, and public peace. According to him, intelligence reports suggest that unidentified armed groups are mobilizing sophisticated arms and logistics to carry out coordinated attacks in Takum, Osa, Kurumi, local governments, as well as Yangtu Special Development Area.
It has become imperative to alert Taraba State Government and all relevant security agencies on the credible intelligence information pointing at imminent coordinated large-scale attacks on Kotep communities in southern Taraba. Allegedly, unidentified armed groups plan to launch massive attacks on villages and towns in Osa, Takum, and Yangtu Special Development Area and environs in the coming days or weeks.
And still on the security matters and the concern of Nigeria, a group called Concerned Nigerian Leaders have called for the establishment of a presidential task force on national security to tackle killings across the country. In a statement issued on Saturday, the group lamented the escalating violent attacks by gunmen and insurgents. The statement, which was signed by several people drawn from different groups and different areas of Nigeria, cited the Amnesty International report, which said that at least 10,217 Nigerians have been killed in violent attacks within the last 2 years. The group noted that Benue State alone has witnessed 6,896 deaths, while over 450,000 people in the area had been killed. Noted that in Plateau State, 2,630 lives had been lost in the last few months. And of course, the good news is that in Sokoto State, 2 suspected members of the Lakroa terrorist group have been reportedly killed by troops of the Nigerian Army in Mano community in Tangaza local government area of the state. The incident happened on Saturday when the terrorists went to the community market to buy food items. They were reportedly ambushed by soldiers as they were going back to their hideouts. The Army operations officer in Tangaza, Gudu, Binji, and Silame local government areas, Major Chukuma, confirmed the operation, saying that the criminals were intercepted by the troops at the market. He said after a brief exchange of fire, 2 of the terrorists were neutralized, while others escaped to the bush. Chukuma said 3 rifles and 5 motorcycles were recovered. Well, that is it from the highlights of the challenges that we have in the security sector. But from the comments of the Chief of Defense Staff, the former Chief of Army Staff, as well as the group of leaders that are advocating for certain actions to be taken, it is very obvious that Nigeria is still groping in the dark as far as this security challenge is concerned. Secondly, it is surprising, of course, that shortly after the National Security Advisor will come out to say that the government had done substantially to bring this insurgency under control, we are having the Chief of Defense Staff say something that is slightly different, and of course attributing the upsurge in these clashes to politics. One earlier video that we did, we had tackled this issue that politics is responsible for the upsurge in the problems that we have in the security sector in the country. My opinion has been that, first, he does not actually appreciate the fact that this problem predated the current government. And it does appear that the problems have actually been increasing. The territories that were captured by the insurgents under Jonathan were fewer than the ones that were captured, or not as large as the ones that were captured under President Muhammadu Buhari. And it does appear that with the current trend, the number of people that are likely going to be killed and the territory that are likely going to be under the control of these violent non-state actors under this administration may surpass the ones of President Muhammadu Buhari. Why will this be so? I think I've made allusions to the fact that everybody is deciding to behave like the ostrich and to look at the security challenge the way the 12 blind Indians were describing the elephant. Because the 12 Indians were blind and each one of them was holding different parts of the elephant. Each one thought the elephant was what it was looking at. Now, that is a very wrong approach to security generally, because it does simply mean that the views do not comprehend the large picture of the security challenge that we have in Nigeria. And that is a major problem. The challenge that we have is multifaceted. It's only a holistic look at the security problem that will be able to make headway. Blaming politics, I think, is really not the thing for me. That is one. Number two, related to this, is also the fact that we are playing the ostrich generally from the government at the federal level to the government at the state levels when we talk about security. It is surprising that the government under this administration is telling governors that the governors are the chief security officers of their states and that they should go and do something about security. First, governors do not give permits to people to carry guns. Number two, governors do not control the military. They do not control the state security agencies. Governors, in some cases, as it happened in the case of Rivers State, when President Muhammadu Buhari was president, were prevented from setting up state security outfits. And so it is disingenuous today to now ask the state governments that have been disempowered that they should go and handle security problems in their state. And in any case, many of the security problems that we have today are perpetrated by people who move from state to state, meaning that no one state has control over them. And it is only national level, the government, that has control over them. If you look at what is happening widespread across the country, deliberate destruction of farmlands, deliberate destruction of places, and the wanton attacks that have taken place, if you also look at the fact that not many people have been brought to question. And if we also consider the fact that even President Bola Ahmed Tinubu just followed the path of President Muhammadu Buhari and told both the Plateau and Benue state governments to go and make peace at home, as if they control the security agencies, or that the people who are causing this havoc in those states are people that live within those states only. It is a wrong approach to the problem. The suggestions being made, of course, by the former chief of army staff and even by some concerned leaders are not new approaches to the security challenge. When the United States of America had a problem in Iraq with communities whose loyalties were divided between the Americans who were trying to fight and overthrow Saddam in that country and the people who were loyal to Saddam, there was a region called the Amber region. And what the Americans did was to vacate, move all the people from that region to central areas. And all those who refused to move from those areas were now regarded as part of the insurgents that had to be tackled. In the case of Nigeria, as of today, many people have already fled, and many communities that have fled several parts of Borno, Yobe, Katsina, Zamfara, Sokoto, and so may not even be able to go back in the current atmosphere. It will take a long time for them to go back. Now, what the government needs to do is to find creative ways of confronting these violent non-state actors. The mistake of not confronting them, they engage in bolder actions that defy the state. If you don't confront them boldly, you cannot even sit down to make peace with them. In almost all the areas and places that programs of the radicalization and so forth have taken place, there has had to be a proper knockdown, a blow to the insurgents. And it is only when they have been weakened, terribly weakened, that you can take their supporters from them and give them new orientation. As long as they are strong, you cannot take their supporters from them. And that is the mistake that some people are even making when they suggest that we should go to the bush and make peace with them. Another point to note is that these guys have been in the bush for so long that they now have or may have strengthened their international connections with armed groups around the world. Now, you cannot simply wake up one day and go and sit down with them and think that you have achieved peace if you don't knock them out. So for any non-kinetic approach to succeed, the kinetic approach must be successful. Without the kinetic approach being successful, non-kinetic approaches cannot work. And that is the mistake that we appear to be making. And another problem that, of course, is arising out of this security challenge is the fact that there is ongoing across the country massive rural-urban migration, and not much attention is being paid to this. Now, many of the people that may even be migrating from the rural areas may be some of these violent insurgents, kidnappers. When they come to the urban areas, when they may not find jobs to do, they may fall back or have creative ways to make a living. And those creative ways that they will make will be to attack people, increase armed robbery and stealing and all kinds of theft within the town. So this problem of insurgents is not likely going to remain in the rural areas. It's going to come calling in the urban areas. More so, or especially when the time reaches that they have sent out almost all their victims who farm in the rural areas from which they get money whenever they successfully kidnap them. I don't know what you think about the current situation in the country. Do you agree with the government and its agencies that the current security challenge that we have is political, is because of 2027? If 2027 passes, will the security problem also disappear? Do you agree with the National Security Advisor, Malam Nuhu Ribadu, the former chairman of the EFCC, when he says that Nigeria's security environment has improved? Is that the experience in your village? Is that the experience in your community? Please send us a picture of the peace or whatever situation you have in your community. We'll publish on our website. Let us know what is happening in your community. Do you have peace? My name is Rimamnde Shawulu. This is Update.